The CEO is a very unique animal. It's an animal that hunts, thinks, sleeps, and lives differently from all other species. It has its own language and its own instincts. It eats last and has worries that no one else has. The CEO has thoughts it can't express to its employees, to its friends, and to its spouse. It's an animal unlike any other animal. I'm Alex Gertzberg, and this is CEO Confidential, where we learn about this rare breed, one heartbreak, one victory, one story at a time. This show is sponsored by the law firm of Gertzberg Licata, your ally for business growth. Hey folks, Alex Gertzberg here. Thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of CEO Confidential. Folks, you're about to hear an interview with a very good friend of mine. His name is Phil Rankin. Phil is the president of Even Mix and Special Metal Stamping, a couple of manufacturing companies here in Northeast Ohio. He is a business leader, a team leader. He is a consummate entrepreneur. And Phil, as you're about to hear, is a mixologist. Enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks. Phil Rankin.
Yes, sir.
Tell me the story of your going into business for yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So, I worked in corporate America, approximately about like 17 years, 3 different companies, private and then public, ending up in $1.6 billion in revenue annually. A division within a group, within a publicly traded company.
What company was that?
PCP is a ticker, Precision Cast Parts, now part of Berkshire Hathaway. They were bought out by Berkshire after I left the organization. So it was and people called it really kind of like GE on steroids. There have been a couple stories about PCP or PCC. It's a very full contact organization. We had quarterly reviews. They still have them now. The CEO his name is Mark Donegan. He's pretty infamous around the company. And like I said, you could Google him. There are a few interesting articles about him. Very intense guy. And, I learned a lot of things from the organization. And what it ended up being was, so we got a new group president, and he kind of had his group of people that he wanted to run stuff with. So, pretty soon after he took control, myself and a few of the other VPs for our division, we were out. So it was an interesting scenario for me, because I had younger kids, and it was like right before Christmas, and out. And they gave me good severance. So, it was fair and equitable. That's okay. I don't begrudge them for anything for it. But it kind of, at the same time, it gave me a time to shift my focus a bit. And I'd always, I'd done my undergrad, obviously my graduate degree, and, worked very hard for the company. Always a very company guy. I was, 1,000% into the company. And at that time, it was an inflection point for me. And, I had a lot of personal stuff going on as well at the same time. And I'm like, it's time to stop, making money for other folks and start making money for myself and my family. I made good money in the company where I was working before, but it's like, this is a time to kind of change our focus for a while. So was it at that point, I did work for Alcoa for about, I think it's about 9 months. They really liked people from PCC. They really liked the way they focused. They focus on a lot of the same metrics, just, the way that they led the company was about 180 degrees.
Okay.
Being, let's say, like focusing on, yes, doing the right thing, but profit. The main focus at PCC was profit. And at Alcoa, the main focus, I would say, yes, profit, but people. It gave people a lot more chances to redeem themselves. PCC, if you screwed up a couple of times, it was just out. People found the door pretty quickly. General managers had a term of average term of about year and a half, and then they were out. So I went into private enterprise and started looking at small businesses and ended up finding, you know, I ended up finding three within a span of about a year. First, I did an asset acquisition, a stamping company, really not so much for the ongoing business, but mostly for the assets and for, they had kind of a genesis of a product development, product they were working on developing. That's what I was after. I was looking for a company with a niche product, niche customer. So acquired the first company basically for the debt on the books, wasn't doing very well.
And that was a metal stamping company.
Metal stamping company.
All right.
The name of it was Total Automation.
Yeah.
Acquired that. Second acquisition was actually a company called American Assembly Tools. They made air-driven assembly tools for, all kinds of industrial markets. I mean, of course, you'd immediately think of automotive, like an automotive assembly line. Yes, they use lots of those, but there are lots of other companies that do little assembly operations. And these tools would go all the way up to like, about 600 foot-pounds, which is a lot of force. You can hang on to about 10 foot-pounds. So a lot of force these things could generate, and they could assemble, caterpillar crawlers and stuff like that, big pieces of machinery. So acquired that because it was basically some undervalued technology. The owner, it was kind of, driving it into the ground a little bit. So I thought, great technology, another niche product, help build out a little bit of a portfolio. It made sense to a financial guy and a manufacturing guy. Third company, another stamping company here in Cleveland, Legank Stamping on the east side. And they had, I bought that one for the customer base. So very good customer base there. So buy those three, combine them together, did, basically, found them myself, found them all three different ways. First one through a friend of a friend, second one through a broker that I found online, and then the third from a broker calling me. So very interesting acquisition.
So what year is this?
This is in 2010.
And the decision to become an entrepreneur rather than someone's employee, when does that decision get made and how?
That decision was made in the beginning, so right around like January of 2010. That's when I started looking. I had some friends that had done similar type things, acquired small businesses, small niche businesses, and put a few of them together, and then were able to build up a little bit of a like a mini conglomerate almost of like two or three different manufacturing businesses and get them to work together.
And so how long before the businesses became profitable to you?
So actually, one was pretty much profitable right away. The other two, I would say after in between like 6 and 12 months.
Okay.
It took focusing, I was a cost accountant by training. So that's where I grew up, kind of in manufacturing plants doing cost accounting. So I took, basically that same baseline approach that I learned over 15 years, like, okay, first get your costs under control, understand what your costs are, make sure you're pricing things correctly. I mean, it sounds very fundamental, but there's a significant amount of work that goes on behind that. Get everything costed correctly, get everything priced correctly, and then take on the task of incenting the workers to be able to get their motives to be aligned with yours, which is something that I still struggle with today. 10 years later, that's a constant struggle.
Yeah. And at some point, I want to shift stories here now.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, the stamping business, which you still have, right, is no longer your sole focus and is no longer the only thing going on in your entrepreneurial world. So tell me that story.
Yeah. So it really grew. I mean, it grew over time. So basically we started the product line called Even Mix, basically mixers for 55 gallons for IBCs. all kinds of different sized containers. We started to grow that business. Of course, we grew it from basically zero. We developed the technology. We, got our provisional patent, and then we actually got the full patent on the design of the blade, which is really kind of the secret sauce for what we are doing there. We had the stamping business going at the same time. Now, a lot of those assets support the even mix business, making that. And I will say that I didn't have the foresight to think of it at the time, but when I acquired American Assembly Tools, it was actually a vertical acquisition for even mix. Because, okay, great, you make these mixing blades. Well, how do you power them? How do you turn them? Most of the people in the marketplace did it with air motors. So I'm like, turn to my engineers, come on, guys, like, we make air motors. We've got to be able to make one that can power ours. And of course, we developed it and it worked.
And so this is a this is a process. And you've patented this, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we patented the design of the blade. Now, one interesting thing there. So I was working with, and he was just kind of there with the business when I came. He knew the gentleman that I bought Total Automation from. Now he is 90 years old, Dan Shramo. He's on the patent. I put him on the patent, and he used to be a launch engineer for NASA, like back in the 50s and 60s and stuff.
Wow.
90 years old. Now he is trailing back, but yeah, he's been. I mean, I talked to Dan I've talked to him at least every other day for the last 10 years.
Phil, so this is a process that you've patented, and it creates mixers, right? You manufacture mixers for companies that want to mix stuff, right? And one of those things that became an opportunity for you became one about a year ago, right? When the world is panicking and falling apart with this new strain of virus called COVID-19 and thinking that the world is coming to an end because of it. What happens with even mix at that time?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting time for us. My stamping business had basically flattened, it like every other business kind of flattened to like fell off pretty precipitously right at that time. It was a very interesting process. We were still, we'd been gaining momentum, but I got a call from a customer in Dubai, and we'd sold a couple mixers to this gentleman in Dubai to mix the IBCs, the big plastic totes. And he said, Phil, so what I'm looking to do with your mixer is I want to use your air mixer because I'm going to mix small batches of hand sanitizer. And this is, right when COVID was hitting, right at the very beginning. And so he tells me this. I went home that night. I'm like, man, it's like that guy is on to something. As much as they're talking about hand sanitizer, people are going to be all over this topic. So that night, immediately, I do some of my own marketing, or, I manage them. I'm not smart enough to set them up, but I'm smart enough to keep them going. And I basically pivoted my marketing campaign that night and jumped all over the terms: hand sanitizer mixer, mixing hand sanitizer, any different derivation of that term that I could think of. Went home and pivoted my Google ads to be able to take advantage of that. And we went almost, and then people started Googling that just constantly. And the phone just started ringing off the hook. That term was popular, and we got there kind of first. I wrote a couple blog articles about it, like right away. How do you make hand sanitizer? What are the critical elements? How do you mix it? Just informational stuff, anything that I could find, anything that I could assimilate. And we went very quickly from making, selling 5 per week to 5 per day. It was everything we could do to keep up with it.
So prior to that, quarantines are happening, and I'm bringing myself back to March 2020, and the economy was just this big question mark at that
Oh,
time.
yeah.
So does your stamping business come to a halt?
Pretty much. I mean, it cut in half
Right.
right away.
So from that sort of moment of uncertainty to the aha, I think I've got something with even mix here. What's that time frame?
Like 48 hours.
Wow.
It had to be fast. I mean, you were, it was survival.
Yeah.
It was survival because, especially in a high fixed cost business, it was survival. I mean, a lot of my competitors have gone out of business in the stamping world for sure. Um, all their employees have gone. I mean, certainly I had to lay off a few employees with the stamping business, but largely, and of course, state of Ohio, everything was shut down unless you were a critical business in that definition. And, we actually fell into that definition because, basically we were making making things for the process for PPE. Plus a lot of our customers that were still operating and stamping, they were critical businesses. So we had to keep them supplied. But
Yeah.
no, it was quick, and it was literally that quick.
And how long does it go from 5 a week to 5 a day?
That carried on for almost 3 months.
No, I'm saying like
Oh.
how fast did you go from a business that made 5 mixers a week to a business that makes 5 a day? Like how fast does that ramp up?
2 to 3 weeks.
And what is that like? I mean, you've got to acquire new capabilities and new, right? Or
We could do everything. The challenge was scaling that quickly.
talk about that.
Scaling that quickly. Yeah. So for us, it was, and of course, I'm always trying to watch my cash to begin with. I'm an accountant by nature, so I try to minimize my investment. So, I'm always trying to just keep pace with everything. Okay, keep the supplies coming in just in pace of
Yeah.
when we need them. Well, all of a sudden your pace, more than quadruples, whatever. It goes by 5 times. So immediately had to like get a hold of my suppliers. We made a lot of the parts in-house. So really diverted a lot of my resources in-house to making those supplies for us. I mean, it was kind of all hands on deck, and the folks that work with me, they are all fantastic people. They were more than happy to do it as well. I mean, they knew it was survival as well. They wanted to keep going. So they jumped right in the water with me.
What was what were your fears and uncertainties at that time?
Well, when is it going to stop? Is this just going to, well, first of all, it's like, I mean, I jumped on the strategy, but I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if it was going to pan out. I didn't know if people would keep coming for it. So you didn't know when it was going to stop. You didn't know where the world was going to go with a lot of this stuff. Was it going to get worse? How would our products work and things like this? And, of course, this is mixing hand sanitizer. This is a high concentration of alcohol. It's very flammable, so we had to produce, our products and make sure that we can make them very safe,
Right.
make sure that our customers can use them very safe, make sure they can ground them, make sure there are no sparks, because a spark and it all goes up.
Wow. Yeah. So you've now had a year of look back, right? A
Mhm.
year of experience to draw from. Biggest lessons, biggest aha moments, biggest what comes to mind when I say what have you learned in the last year?
Well, definitely, I'd learned this lesson in the very beginning of to listen to the customer. As much as you like to think you have well thought out strategies, and we used to say it's like, well, here in like the in the, what do we call it really? It's kind of like, in the star chamber, in the star chamber, it's like, you can think of a lot of ideas like, yeah, this is what the world needs. This is where we're going. It's like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything if the customer's not going to go for it. I mean, they're the ones really that drive everything. I mean, of course, you can lead them a little bit. You can lead them with leading technologies, but if they're not going to buy it, you can do whatever you want. You're just wasting money. For example, real quickly, at the very beginning of Even Mix, we designed these to be put into fixed into 55-gallon drums at the manufacturer. Still working on that, still working on breaking into that market, but that is a very classic, very consolidated market. Haven't broken into it yet. We have better technology, better pricing. We can do everything better. Haven't broke into it yet because it was a very consolidated market. However, we had customers at a few shows say, "Oh, that is a great design. Can you put them in these IBC totes, these plastic totes?" And of course, my R&D guy says, "Well, that's a good idea. So we can fold wings back on a plane. Why can't we fold these mixing blades down? It's not that hard. Well, I'm sure we can figure this out." We go back, we figure it out, we start making them in totes. That's a very fragmented market. Boom, we start like gaining market share, very small from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that has been the fuel for our growth to begin with. And then once again, another fantastic example of that, hand sanitizer. Guy tells me, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this." I thought, well, I'll shift my Google campaign. I mean, if I'm wrong, oh well, I'll spend a few $100, maybe a few $1,000. I can always change again, but customer seems to be pulling me this way. This makes sense. Let's follow it. Let's see where it goes. And it took off. And, we try to do that. I mean, I try to listen even more, as they say, you got 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Right.
Listen more than you talk. So I try to listen. I try to really listen and think and understand what they're trying to do and really try to solve their problems. So, now the customers are starting to pull us into like larger containers. And so we're starting to go there and we're learning, we have something really unique there and they're really interested in it. So go where the customers are pulling you. I mean, not always, of course, they want us to do some things. And of course, my cost brain quickly goes through. It's like, "Oh, you want me to do that?" It's like, our technology doesn't work well for that because I know I'm going to lose my shirt on it. So
See, that's the thing that I can imagine a lot of business owners listening to this can see how this can be fraught with peril. You pivoted in a 48-hour period and you quintupled your orders over a 3-month period.
Yep.
You start mobilizing resources in a very short period of time based on your belief that there's going to be a huge demand, right?
Well, actually luckily it was better than that. It wasn't my belief. It was pulling us. So so we really, I mean, I'm sure you're the same. I mean, that's what I love about business. That's what I love about being in charge, because when you're pushing on a door and it opens easily, run through the door.
Oh, that's
when you're pushing on the door and you're getting hit, it's pushing back. It's like, might not want to go there. So that is that is the awesome part that I love about business. That's kind of like, calling the audible at the line of scrimmage. It's like, there's an opportunity. Let's test it. Let's go that way. Just go. Go.
I love that you're using that analogy. But I'm going to play devil's advocate with you, right? Because the counter narrative is, if it seems right and the door won't go, you may need to keep pushing. Right. You may need to kick that door in. In fact, you might need to get a crowbar and just find your way to the other side of that door because of some other. So, and I guess that's really the narrative that you are relying on here makes, with the benefit of hindsight, makes perfect sense, right? Here's a door that opened easily for you and you charged all your resources went through that door. Right.
Yeah. Yep. But I mean, that's a very good point. But let's say, okay, to use that analogy, like let's say getting into that 55-gallon drum, that closed drum market. Okay, we haven't made any progress into that consolidated market, but am I still working on it? Oh yeah, I'm still working on it.
Right.
I know it's still there.
Yeah.
So I just keep pushing. I keep chiseling away at it. But it's
Well, ultimately, um, business, I think, is always some combination of art and science, right? The
Mhm.
science part is there's data, there's history,
Yeah.
but the art, there's still gut. You made a gut call, right? And you started taking dollars out of your Google ads in the stamping business and started shoving them into the even mix
Mhm.
piece, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, but everything, yes, it is gut, but it's a calculated risk. I mean,
sure,
I'm pushing because I know that it's like, well, I can pull back,
yeah,
life is about options.
yeah,
And I can take an option. It's a decision tree. I mean, there are so many decisions open to us every single day that we can make.
right, right.
I can pull back, I can modify a little bit, I can go harder.
Well, and two, gosh, this is where I mean, I run a series of service organizations, and you run a manufacturing, a couple manufacturing companies, and this is where the cost structures and the cost analysis of a good manufacturing CEO can really translate into any business, right? Not putting too many eggs in one basket, making sure that you have the right mix, no pun intended, of resources committing relative to the ROI that you're expecting. Um, you're really good at that,
I,
right?
I love it.
Yeah,
Absolutely love it. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I mean, my ideal day is like thinking about all the scenarios that can happen, not only planning out what's going to happen, planning the timing, then I'm into efficiency. So how can I get the most possible out of my
yeah.
day? How can I get the most possible done? I like to sequence it all out, but you've got to be
That was me, and that was me breaking my own rules about turning off sounds from this computer. Sorry, keep going.
that's okay. But you've got to be, even though I like to plan it out, it's like as an entrepreneur, I'm ready for it to change like the second that I walk
Right.
in the door, because it usually does.
Yeah. Yeah. Phil, this was a great story. I appreciate it. There's a lot that
It's still evolving.
yeah, it's so good to see that it is you met opportunity head on and you jumped on it, and it's like, you're riding a bull,
Yeah.
it just kept going, and you stayed on, and you found the right mix, again, no pun intended, and
Well, I mean, that's the game, right? And I mean, that's the game that we still play every day. So now, how much hand sanitizer is being made? Not much at all. There's still some out there.
yeah,
But, we have like 10 different market segments that we're playing in. And even though we had that blip last year of hand sanitizer, we've still doubled sales every year since 2015. And this year we're on the path to like double sales again from last year. And of
yeah,
course, mathematically, that gets much harder every
right,
year. Percentage wise, it's always the same
right,
number, but the absolute number is a lot bigger all the time. And yeah, we're having to like attack so many other segments, the ag segment, CBD segment, mixing CBD. That's been a big industry for us, mixing paint, mixing personal care products, mixing, um, the liner where they put lines on
oh
streets.
yeah,
That's a
paint,
very
yeah,
heavy paint that has to get mixed up. Water treatment. I mean, I continuously am just amazed at how many things that people mix all the time that settle out and have to mix. All the, organic push. Well, organic lawn fertilizer. Those are like corn gluten solids that settle in a liquid. Well, they've got to be mixed up, constantly mixed up. It's not like a bunch of just liquid chemicals. You're working
right,
with organic products. So those have to be mixed up. There's just a
yeah,
mind-blowing number of things. Food. We mix food for a lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah. I wonder what the last year, no one can ever really know, but you can probably surmise what the success of this last year has done for those different directions that you can go into now.
Yeah.
Would you still have, um, I guess, as many options in your mind, but for having the benefit of the last year? who knows and who cares?
Yeah.
Phil, thank you very much, man. This
Yeah.
was great. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
Good stuff. Phil Rankin, ladies and gentlemen. He is the CEO of Even Mix and Special Metal Stamping,
Mhm.
both here in tropical Cleveland, Ohio, vacation capital of the Midwest.
Absolutely.
Phil can be found all over the internet. The specific handles, as the kids say, Phil, on LinkedIn and Twitter and the company website, all in the show notes. So go here to get those. Folks, we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to CEO Confidential. I hope you enjoyed it. Visit us at ceoconfidential.net and visit our sponsors, the business law firm of Gertzberg Licata and Cover My Six, a business solution that flushes out and repairs legal minefields before they blow up in court. We'll see you next time right here for another episode of CEO Confidential.